Former MHK Ralph Peake narrowly lost his Douglas North seat at last September's election. On Agenda Tonight, he clarifies his future political ambition, as well as explaining how he hopes his new Energy and Sustainability Centre will help us move more quickly to a zero-carbon future. So, are we going to have to pay lots of new green taxes? Would we not be better just using our new gas reserves? You might be surprised with Ralph's answers.
I really stuck to my beliefs on what I stood for and went out with that message and just didn't get enough votes. So I wish John Wannenberg all the best for the next 5 years. And that's how it was. So, yeah, I was surprised, obviously, but I accepted that and moved on. So I had a lot of interest in a number of charities and work I was doing for the island, and luckily enough I've been able to carry those on. So I'm really enjoying that time with the mental health charity called New View. We've renamed that from Quing to New View, and then the Energy and Sustainability Centre, which we're just sort of finalising the structure of that now, and we're bringing on board a number of local companies, and we'll be making an announcement in April around that. And that really is trying to work on what we believe will be the best way for the island to be fully sustainable with renewable energy.
And have you got as far as thinking whether you'll be standing again in 5 years' time?
Oh, I reached that decision very soon after. No, I won't be standing again. I've really, really enjoyed it. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. 6.5 years representing Douglas North. But no, I think that's my stint there. I learned an awful lot. But you know, as you know yourself, it's not all beer and skittles. You know, it is actually, it's very hard work and it's very frustrating as well, particularly when you're, really trying to deliver some values and principles that you believe is right for the Isle of Man. And that's the great thing about being an MHK, is you do get that opportunity to try and do that and learn so much about it. So no, I've done my part for public sector, and I'll be now continuing the work in the charities, which I do believe in.
What do you leave politics with in terms of the experiences you've gained? What is the system broken? Is it capable of reform? Does it need reform?
Yes, I think it's not broken, because obviously it is functioning, and I think the current council ministers are trying to grapple with a number of big issues and trying to do a good job. But I do think it does need to change. I really do, and I think changing that culture to really put the sort of client first and getting back to that sort of small is beautiful, really, because I do think we're on the wrong trajectory, trying to make government bigger and bigger, and government trying to sort of control everything. I called for a number of times, and Tim will mention that we should really, government needs to get out of the way of a number of things. I mean, you sometimes yearn for that total security and not sort of always pushing forward or not changing. But to be honest, that roots you then. Over time, you're rooted to the spot with fear of change. And that's not a good thing. The island in its history has had to make changes. Some of those changes has been forced upon it, but some of the changes have come out of our ancestry and our will to change and adapt. And I think that's where we are now. We're at great opportunity, great crossroads for change. But you have to be brave and take those risks to change. And that's the one thing, I was trying to do, was trying to get that culture changed. And I think I definitely saw some change in the social security division that I was political responsibility for. We're able then to really try and put the customer first. And on occasions we would put the customer first so much that we'd actually go and visit them. And I think once you start changing your mindset to think about how can I actually make this happen, rather than one of a mindset of this is my list of things to do and I'm just going to do them. When you actually look to try and do the best you can, things really do happen, and teamwork starts working, and things are presented, and you pick up the opportunity in front of you, put the effort in, and great things can happen.
Putting the customer first doesn't sound like rocket science, and it's certainly something that Isle of Man government regularly says that it tries to do. So how is that not something that was automatically embraced and adopted across government?
Yeah, I think on the whole it is, and it's spoken of, but it's those little things, isn't it? It's those little things where you actually do do that little extra bit, it's that little extra 5%, 10% to really, is this customer being put first, or are we actually doing it because we just have to do 8 things today? And it's that extra which really then gets people enthused, inspired, and you need the leadership there to support those opportunities, because there will be some failures and be some learnings. It's often said, isn't it, you learn more from failure than you do from success. That's a hard one to sort of grasp at first, but when you actually experience it and realise, actually, if I take responsibility for what I'm doing, you're not then just looking to get success all the time, you're actually looking to learn and improve all the time. So you're not then justifying why you failed, you take responsibility for your job, and then you learn from that failure, if you like, and then you can make improvements.
Is the new Isle of Man government going to make those improvements? Are we going to see a radical departure from what's gone on in the past?
Well, I certainly saw firsthand in the Treasury Board, and certainly Alfred Cannon was obviously Treasury Minister at the time, a lot of challenge, a lot of leadership, strong leadership, and there's one thing that the current Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, he has got in abundance, and that is leadership qualities. So I think from that respect, I think there's a great opportunity there. Whether that Council of Ministers now can really sort of come together on the big issues, as you know, you've got first-hand experience with Council of Ministers, it's not always easy, is it? There's some decisions there that are tricky, and it may be a split vote, and that's where perhaps the fractures start. But certainly I think the current Chief Minister's got the opportunity and the skills to actually really lead Council of Ministers.
I invited you in here specifically to tell us about your work on environmental matters. So what can you tell us about the new centre that's being established, and how is that going to impact on people's lives on the island?
Okay, so the Energy and Sustainability Centre, this is something which we started about a year ago, just trying to formulate that plan and put a structure together where we saw throughout the James Curran report, the impact report, which was delivered for Council of Ministers around the climate change, about the need for government and the private sector to work together. Now, and the last Chief Minister, Mr Quayle, often used to say about working together, but there's very little evidence of that really happening. So I wanted to reach out, and I made some great contacts over the last 5 years, to reach out and try and put a team together that genuinely brought together the private sector and the public sector to really sort of learn how we can come up with an Isle of Man solution. We've got a clear vision now. We've got the climate change bill, which is now an act, and so we've got a clear vision on what we want for 2050, and that really is down to renewable energy from the sun and the wind. They're the abundant natural resources we've got here on the Isle of Man. We're so lucky to have all those. So that's really great. How we actually get there requires a sort of strategy, isn't it? And a number of policies along the way that sort of galvanise action, bring people together, and actually reduce the fear that many people have got. And I think everyone, has got some concern about how we're actually going to get there. But if you can actually start with a clear plan, how you're actually going to get there, we can then start reducing those fears and working together. That really was what I want to do. So the centre is all about learning what we can do. So it's reaching out to experts, getting something that we can turn our natural resources into an Isle of Man solution. So we're bringing together a group of private companies, if you like, so companies here on the Isle of Man with a lot of local workforce to really put those ideas together and actually then start reaching out to government and working on that sort of policy with them.
An awful lot of people on the Isle of Man don't get this, do they? Who say or would suggest that this is something that's not really relevant to the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man's too small. It's not significant enough in terms of carbon emissions to make any difference whatsoever. So why should it matter to the Manx public?
Yeah, and I think that's the message that wants to be clear, so the public can understand it and see the benefits for it. So what we've got it's a great opportunity. That's what I see. It's a great opportunity. At the moment, we've got, if you like, 95% of our energy consumed in the Isle of Man is with fossil fuels, whether that's oil, gas, or whether it's gas to actually generate the electricity. All those things put together is about 95%. So that's not really good enough when we're trying to have a future that has much better, cleaner air. So the numbers, thousands of people around the world that die from poor air quality through the use of fossil fuels is reduced, so we get much cleaner air. So that's a great opportunity we've got, isn't it? So current situations around the world with the war there with Russia and Ukraine, that sort of highlights the vulnerability of the island's energy needs. And so when you actually step back and look at what great natural resources we've got, every day of the year is either sunny with daylight, or there's wind, or some days, as you know, there's both in abundance. Many days we've got so much wind we don't know what to do with it. So if you can actually harness that and turn that to meet our energy needs, I think then once people start believing that this can happen, then I do believe the fear will reduce and people will then get on board.
You're listening to former MHK Ralph Peake. But again, I mean, you're talking there about natural resources around the island. We know that there's a company who very firmly believes that there are significant fossil fuel resources. So should we be investing in the exploitation of those reserves?
Certainly BP, when they actually did drill and they carried out some surveys, they thought there was something down there, and they did some investigations, and without doubt there will be some gas down there, but it's whether you can actually get it to flow to surface, and also flow to surface in enough quantity to actually make it viable, because otherwise, if any of those things there, like there's not enough resource down there, or it can't be brought to the surface economically, I'm afraid you're going to lose your investment, and that's a real possibility to that. I think,
but then assume then that you could extract this gas and it will come up in plentiful quantities. Mm-hmm. Would that be the right thing to do for the Isle of Man at this stage?
Well, I think the time scale is working against that as well, because by the time you actually get it flowing, and if there is enough quantity and there's enough there to do that, I do believe the rest of the world will be moving on. So you'll be sort of buying a ticket on a merry-go-round that's actually slowing down rather than actually getting on one that's speeding up. It's clear now, major financial investors and major companies can see the clear writing on the wall and are really going with renewables. So you look at BlackRock, a financial institution, that they're only now supplying financial support for companies that are and have a good track record in renewables. So the investment will start drying up, and that's the concern. It's people's hard-earned money and investment, although it's their choice, could well be going into something which is heading the wrong way, really.
The atrocious situation that's happening in Ukraine at the moment, does that not drive a coach and horses through previous thinking on energy supplies, energy security? Surely we've got to do more, and we need to do it fairly urgently. And a lot of the stuff that you're talking about by way of renewables and presumably insulation of homes and things like this, this is still a decade away before we could get that developed. Surely we need now to be rethinking how we're going to get a secure supply of fossil fuels to help us through this transition.
Well, as some people may well believe that's to be the case. I don't. I think the case would be to actually have a secure supply of energy rather than fossil fuels, because it's going to take a number of years to get any fossil fuels out of the Isle of Man territorial sea. But even if you made alternative arrangements to buy gas from around the world, you have to make that effort to actually get the gas here. But it's Norway was in a similar position, if you like, over 100 years ago, and what they decided to do, because they had no sort of fossil fuels at that time, so they actually made the decision to start investing in pumped hydro stations, power stations. So it was pumped hydro power. That's what they decided to do. So 1911, they put a power station near the Volmark area, the Volmark power station, and now Norway actually produces 97% of the electricity from pumped hydro. So that's where the water at a higher level will drop through turbines, generate energy through the turbine use, and then they can use that. And so their households today, 100 years after that brave decision was made by their politicians at the time, their households pay on average 8.1 pence per kilowatt hour. Now that's less than half that we're paying here on the island with our 16.9 pence per kilowatt hour for electricity here. So, and that's made, as you know, by natural gas, fossil fuels. So to me, it seems obvious if you look at history that you can actually have a sustainable cost of energy at a price that I think many people would be glad to be paying 8.1 pence of electricity in 2000, current year. So that to me seems quite simple, because if we can acknowledge that the natural resources are here every day, then you can then start putting a model together where you can then start getting your fixed electricity price every day at a price that you can afford.
And the voices in opposition to this will argue that this is just another example of government trying to fleece the public, trying to extract vast sums of taxes through various stealthy means. Is that not correct? I mean, there's a huge amount of investment going to be required if we are going to move away from fossil fuels to a zero carbon future. Surely you must concede that it's going to cost a lot of money to do that.
Well, it will, obviously for new infrastructure, there will be a cost to that, but around the world, energy is generated by private sector infrastructure investments. So, whether it's hydro, whether it's fossil fuels, whatever, it's private investment will come and actually make that generation. And then you'll have then the network will be owned and run by the government. And so if we actually had that here, so at the moment, you see, the MUA are generating as well as distributing. So if you're able to actually break that up, there's one opportunity. That's a model. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but that's one alternative to do, isn't it? So you can attract outward investment from the financial institutions at a price that's very favourable, and let all that risk and infrastructure be delivered by the private sector at a price. That's the agreement. That's the power the government has, is to do that agreement at the time and say, yes, you could do this. You could actually make those investments, and we will actually take so many all our electrical needs off you. But the price would be, let's say, the same as Norway, 8.1 pence, and then that company would then be free to actually export more to the UK to find other customers, and they'd obviously be free to do deals with the UK and perhaps Ireland if there was an interconnector to Ireland. They would then sell at the price that they could achieve with those companies.
Is it a good time to be looking for people to be investing in renewable energies, bearing in mind that across Europe the penny has finally dropped, that relying on gas from Russia is perhaps not the most secure source of energy. So presumably there'll be a whole load of very lucrative contracts being made available across the large countries in Europe, which means that the Isle of Man, with a relatively small population and a relatively small energy use, will be very much at the bottom of the pile by the time these companies decide that they want to come and invest.
Okay, well, the other great thing about the island is that we do have international companies based here, for various reasons, for the great workforce we've got here, but also, for the tax situation. So that's an opportunity we've got. So we've got that sort of, window of the world, window on the world with all those international companies. So that's where we can actually take that opportunity now to actually have a system which not only generates renewable energy, but also then learns how to store that energy so you have dispatchable power when required. Now that next system, that energy system, that is a great model to put together for the rest of the world to see. So I do believe there will be an abundance of opportunities to actually put together the generation, the storage and the distribution in a model that works. Because there'll be plenty of small nations around the world, other island nations around the world, that will be able to look at what we've achieved and replicate it themselves.
And at the moment, we've achieved the establishment of a centre. When are we going to start seeing significant changes, in terms of the average sort of person on the street? When are they actually going to see the opportunities that you're talking about? When are they going to see clean energy available? When are they going to see their homes being properly insulated? When are they going to see much more energy efficient solutions coming forward?
I think that's going to build. That's going to build over the next 18 to 24 months. But I do think we could have renewable energy onto the grid within 24 to 36 months would be, I believe, that would be the time to actually get the energy in. And I think that would be a perfect opportunity for this administration. Put together a simulator, if you like. It's a bit like familiar with aircraft simulation models where the pilots would train on an aircraft simulator so they don't actually have to go up in an aircraft. So imagine if we actually made that simulator where we could actually run all those different scenarios through and actually come up with the best solution for the island.
And the scenarios that you're talking about there are if it's going to be a really cloudy and still, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, in the winter time we get this big high pressure with lots and lots of cloud, no wind, and you're planning for scenarios such as that to see what the best solution is.
You're right. That's absolutely right. So whatever scenario you got for, let's say, photovoltaic, I think you're alluding to there. So the more cloud cover is, the less energy there might be through the photovoltaic panels. Yes, you're right. You could run that as a calculation through the system and actually see what difference it would make to, if you like, the generation or the payback, or when it would actually be able to get onto the grid. But also, more importantly, you could also run scenarios through there for gas. And so you could then genuinely run through a scenario where you actually become as dependent on gas and then delay the renewables to come in. That would then give you the evidence that would help people see and understand what the best scenario would be for the island. That's what I'm really calling for, is to get to that point where we're able to share those calculations and outputs from the calculations, so people can start to see what we're actually talking about. And
the model that you're proposing is primarily private sector funded and private sector led, with a bit of support from government. Is that right?
I think it is, because I think the private sector now, locally, the international companies that are here are really now making it clear that they have to see some real sort of clear policies and action for them to stay here. Not just to attract new business, but for some of those companies to actually report back to their boards around the world and actually say, yeah, we are going to stay here because there's clear policy of renewable. Now, if there was then a clear policy to stay with fossil fuels for the next 10 years, those boards would make a different decision. That's clear now. So it's really important have a consortium of local businesses to get them involved, so they're assured, if you like, that the future of the island can be aligned to their future, to their board's wish of where they actually want to site their offices around the world. I think that's really important, and that's great then for the opportunity of government to be there and to listen and to work on that solution best for the island, that we can work on it together. So yes, I do see a coherent message from the private sector that hopefully government can then listen to, take on board, and then we can then work on a solution for the island together.
One thing is sure, with current volatility in gas and oil prices, it's going to be a very interesting few years in the development of the energy sector. This programme is available as a podcast which you can access from Manx Radio's website. Please get in touch with Phil Gaughan at manxradio.com if you have any views or thoughts on the programme. But for now, I'm Phil Gaughan. Go to Mayo. Thanks for listening.